All right, everybody, good evening. We're meeting with Bob and Nancy Mollers this evening. They are exemplary, wonderful, aggressive, passionate collectors, and I want to hear about, their collection and how they came to be collectors. Let's start. How long, I don't think I want to start with that question. Were either of you collectors before you married, Bob, Nancy?
No.
Well, I mean, baseball cards.
Collectors of art, no.
Everybody collects something, but in terms of art, so that began, how did you guys begin collecting? When was that?
I don't know. I mean, it's a hard question to answer. Just before we got married, we bought our first painting, which was a decorative work.
Okay.
And then we started making our own work. She was a weaver, and I played around with ceramics.
And I remember that.
I started getting interested in looking at museums and then going to some galleries and slowly educated ourselves. And it's been something we've been doing for over 40 years. And when it comes to the word collecting, I don't know when you can actually say we were collecting or even what that necessarily means, because if you talk to a dealer, a client is a collector to them, okay? But that doesn't mean necessarily they're what I would call a collector. I think a collector is a person that has some sort of direction or intent in what they're doing.
I define a collector who continues to acquire art after their walls are full.
Pardon? Yeah, that's true. Or, somebody could have just enough great Durham wood cuts and be a great collector of Durham.
That's true. And I think Leo Castelli defined a collector as someone who spent more time buying art than earning the money to pay for it.
Well, or I can guarantee you think more about it than what your occupation is.
Okay.
You're always thinking about your next piece you'd like to have, or how in the hell you could pay for it, or whatever.
So
how many
anyway,
pieces do you think? I'm sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
We could say it's an interest we've developed together since we've been married. Neither of us comes from any families that had any interest in art or knew anything about art. And, we're just blue-collar kids, so to speak. And I sort of think as our first effort at collecting when we started getting into buying some editions and prints by European artists such as Marc Chagall and John Moreau, Mata, Calder, and that was when we started spending money we didn't necessarily have all the time.
Yeah, we never had money.
How many of those pieces do you still own?
We actually have the first piece, which is a Moreau. We bought that in our first trip to Paris in 1971, our first trip to Europe.
Right.
And we bought it from Heinz Vergruen, very famous dealer.
Yep.
And we still have it.
And it was very intimidating for us to go there.
Yeah.
But most of the things you bought at that time you don't have anymore, is that right?
No.
Other than our little Moreau.
No.
Is the Moreau because it was the first piece, or is it because
it's sentimental? Yeah.
Yeah. And how many pieces do you think you've bought over 40 years? I bet you don't have a good idea.
400.
And how many do you think you have now?
250.
And
we've given over 100 to museums.
And how much do you think? You said to me the other day that you don't think you spent over 10 grand very often, if at all.
We have spent over 10 grand probably 6 times.
And how much do you think the most valuable piece you have or has given away is worth?
Over $250,000.
Wow.
But that isn't why we collect, just for
no, we don't do it for money.
How things appreciate in value. Some do and some don't.
Actually, we have things hanging up in our collection that it's sort of like the housing market. They're probably worth a lot less than we pay for them too. But we don't take them down or hide them because we still like the work.
That's the most important criteria, I think. Do you want to give us a little bit of a tour?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's another little thing. We were collecting all of these European artists, but when I was in grad school, one of my classmates was working at a gallery on Ontario Street called Days on Zax.
Right.
And Days on Zax was having a show up at Pash. And she said I should come down and see this show. So to make a long story short, it was seeing at Paschke and being disturbed by the work, but then thinking more and more about it, that we actually bought a Paschke shoe. So that might be what I would call the first contemporary piece in the collection.
Was that in what, in the late 70s probably?
No, 72.
Or early on, really early.
Yes, and that's the shoe that was painted in 71. And believe it or not, that was already a resale.
That's a painting, right?
Yes.
I've seen that. Where's that now, do you think?
Oh, we have it.
We have
It's
it.
here.
Oh, you have it. That's where I saw it? Okay, cool.
But last year, I think it was last year, we donated a great Paschke drawing to the Art Institute. That's another thing. We have a good relationship with some museums. The Art Institute is one of them, especially in paper. And we've been giving them works almost every year now.
Do you
So,
sell things? Do you resell things periodically?
Not very often. We don't do that much. Not the beginning, but maybe 15 years ago, there was a collector friend of ours that really collected a lot of work from University of California, Davis people.
Yeah.
Like the ceramicists and all. And
Yeah,
we
like,
have
also like Wiley and Roy DeForest.
Peter Focus, Ron Nagel, Peter Vandenberg,
Yep, okay.
Tom Holland, David Cavulli,
Right.
and he just is a collector that just loves that area. And we have sold to him over the years. People will call up and ask us to sell things to them. And we also get calls from dealers that want us to sell the work to the museums because they're looking for a particular piece. But that's rare that we do that. So you want to actually take like a little walk around there? Is that it?
Do you want to do that? Can you do it?
Sure, we can do that. Now, the group that's listening to this and watching this, I assume that they will want to ask questions, correct?
Yeah, we can let you want. Yeah, how do you want to do this? We can let them ask as we go. We can wait till the end.
So does anybody have a question so far on any of this?
Hold on, I need to go see who's got their hand raised, or somebody might have just unmuted themselves. Hold on, if somebody wants to ask a question, raise your hand. It's probably the best, and/or unmute yourself and jump in.
I actually have a question. This is Jason.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
How do you find new artists? You know, is it kind of word of mouth, or I guess the question is, how does one, as an artist, get you to come do a studio visit?
Well, I mean, there's many answers to that. I mean, the simplest one, first of all, is gallery shows naturally. You see work in gallery. Then you have all these international art fairs. Now, we don't go to all of them, but we've been to practically every one of them at one point or a time. Also, semi-recently, I've been going to the bachelor and master's degree shows at the Art Institute of Chicago, and I see work by young artists. Generally, they have business cards by their work, and I contact them and do studio visits. And by word of mouth, actually, no, not for us. We don't, people don't come up to us and say, you should go see this. But however, we do word of mouth to other people, and they end up going. Like there was an MFA graduate from the Art Institute this past year. I bought a couple pieces, and then I called up and emailed certain people, and we sold 10 out of the studio. So that happens sometimes that way. And sometimes you're in a collector's home, or you're in a museum when they're doing a show of new work, and sometimes you'll see something you knew nothing about before, and you get very interested in it. So there's many ways to discover art. I mean, there is no one pure way to do it.
Yeah, and in recent times, we've even discovered some artists on the internet. Just, you know, Bob's the kind of a guy who
That's true. I forgot about
things
that.
constantly, you know.
Yeah, somebody I've never really actually met. I discovered the work, and she was in Düsseldorf, and she was Japanese. And so happened my wife was in Germany about a year later, made a visit, and acquired work. So there is no one set thing as to how we discover things. And since we don't spend a lot of money, we don't have a lot of money, we're really not involved with these kinds of what I call art groups where everybody is running after the same artist kind of thing. Once the stampede has started, we're not even close to that. We're pre-stampede, let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that answer.
Karen, did you want to ask a question?
I noticed that you have a lot of pieces on your wall, but I'm wondering if you have pieces in storage and just in general with all the pieces, like, do you have humidity, like, do you control the humidity? Do you worry about preserving them? Does that become a lot to maintain?
Okay, we don't really like to put work in storage. We do have pieces that are in, I would say, a large closet space we have on our unit.
Right.
We make sure all photography and all works on paper are far from windows, so they don't get any kind of light, you know, unnatural light. Humidity and dryness and all that isn't too big of a deal here, but when we were living in Houston, the humidity was so high there, it was dangerous for paper pieces. But we like to live with the work, so basically, most of the works in the collection are visible without going into the closet space. And actually we have when we moved to our new space, we actually gave like 10 pieces away a year or two ago because they actually wouldn't fit. Our ceiling is now only 8.5 and 9 feet, where before we were 10 feet. And that 1 foot made a big difference on some pieces. So we donated them to different museums. And we are really sort of concentrating a lot in the past few years on works on paper, because generally they're manageable. You can deal with them yourself without having installers or other types of things. And you can change them real quick, meaning you can take a work off of a certain size, and if you have another work that's similar, just take one off the hook and put the other one in the space. So we sort of move things around occasionally. And other pieces that are very, very heavy are basically here to stay until we move or something. So I understand, and it's a very wise question, because a lot of people do not realize that you have to take care of pieces because they do deteriorate. And, you know, some people just aren't aware of it. I mean, I come into collections and we see photographs that are exposed to window light, you know, and paper pieces.
Yeah, and we've had our own experience or two with, you know, paperwork where the image starts disappearing or a signature starts disappearing, and you got to be careful about these things.
Right. So yes, it is a concern of ours, and let's see. That's one reason we gave the ASCII drawing, because the paper was actually starting to discolor. But that's because I don't think he
The way
archived it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Problem.
Sometimes artists aren't very careful about those things. So,
Especially early on in their careers.
yeah, well, that's true. But we had a Joseph Raphael painting, which I'm quite sure you're familiar with Joseph Raphael. Yep. And the black oil wash was peeling off or chipping off the painting. And artists do not like to fix their work. So that's an issue too.
You mean a fixative as opposed to repair?
Or whatever you want to call it.
But there's a classic story about a George Siegel sculpture that the Art Institute had, and they sent it to him to to repair, and he decided that he really wanted to improve it, so that he embellished it, and then it went back to the Art Institute, and a short period of time later, the ass fell off of it. So that, I don't know, I think frequently the institutions don't want to send art to the artist. I mean, creating art's different than repairing it.
Right. And I mean, I was a ceramicist, and I actually had an artistic career for 15 years. And to be honest with you, if something just didn't work out right with a piece that someone bought, what I did is I just created it again from scratch. Because ceramics, that's a whole science in trying to repair ceramics. So, sometimes artists are that way too. They just do a new piece or something.
Yeah, I've got another story about that, but I'm going to move on. Deirdre, did you have a question?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I noticed that you were unmuted. I'll remute you or something in a moment. How about Patricia?
That's because I keep getting cut off.
Okay, Patricia?
Yeah, actually, I do have a question.
Sure.
You spoke a little bit about recently you found some artists on the internet, and so I was curious how that happened.
We have photographs by Thomas Ruf, a pretty significant German photographer. And I Google a lot. And so occasionally I Google the artists in our collection just to see what's new or new imagery. And while I was looking at Thomas Ruf Googling about the third page of Google, there was a website called Students of Thomas Ruf, because he teaches in the Düsseldorf Academy at the time. And I looked at the students' work, and every student had images and their email for contact. So that's the other thing. If you're dealing with people in a foreign land and people don't know the language, that can be an issue, okay? So this girl is Japanese, living in Germany, didn't know English.
Not very well.
And I know a little bit of German. So let's just put it this way. The initial contact was rough, but fortunately her boyfriend speaks English.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. And we kept on communicating, and then, like I said, my wife about a year later was in Düsseldorf and spent the day with her and bought some work out of the studio. And then about, 5 years later, I curated a show at Tony White Gallery here in Chicago, and I put her in it. And they sold some of her works, which was quite nice. So, she got exposure here in the States. So that's how I found it. But I'm always online. I'm always Googling the artists we have to see what's going on and try to keep up with things. Because you can't make every show in the world. Even if you go to all these art fairs, you can only see so much. But I like being able to search the web and do that. However, art on the internet is not like seeing art in person, as we all know. So you better know the artist's work pretty well when you're looking at the web. We have bought some pieces off of the web, and we really haven't been disappointed with it.
No.
However, when the old days, when people would send you slides or transparencies or even Polaroids, that was a disaster. We passed on some pieces that were sent in Polaroid, and when we saw them in person, it would have been an instant sale. So I think the internet is at least a great vehicle for an artist if it's set up right and it's user-friendly, and always have your contacts so people can make contact.
When you buy things on the internet, Bob and Nancy, is this artist you've already seen their work in the flesh? Or is it sometimes, okay, so you have some sense of what it is.
However, sometimes we could be looking at a gallery, let's say a gallery that we like a lot, and we haven't seen the work in person, then we'll start making inquiries about that work, pricing and things like that, so that if we ever go to the gallery, we're set to see the works in person if possible. So we're doing some free education, shall we say.
Are you guys familiar with Google Alerts?
Well, I guess that means if you can type in, something about an artist or a name, and anything that's new, it would pop up to you. Is that what you're saying it is?
You'll get an email every time. I get them daily on a number of things like that.
No, I haven't done that yet.
Well, go to Google and type in Google Alerts, and you can set up the parameters you want so that every time a Thomas Ruf article comes out, it could be too many, Oh, but you can set it up once a day, you know, so you get an email once a day and it'll list all the time his name has come up in the past 24 hours.
Okay, cool.
I'm interested in the decision-making process. If Nancy went to Europe and purchased something, does she check in with you? Do you check in with her? Or do you each have independent authority? My experience with couples is that there's a whole array of the decision-making process. Sometimes one person has veto power. Sometimes people shop independently. Sometimes I've seen couples each write checks, you know, together on things they agree on. What do you guys do?
I think we're pretty fortunate. We don't really have a problem that way. She's bought work on her own, and I have bought work on my own. We basically are together on what we like. Maybe we're not always crazy about what each one of us get, but you know, sometimes you really don't have time or the opportunity to contact the other person. I mean, today with computers you can. But a lot of the things we've done, in fact, we've never traveled to Europe with a computer, let's put it that way,
Right.
or even New York with a computer. So we're sort of old-fashioned that way. So she knows what we're looking at or people that we're interested in. So if she was somewhere, I'm just going to make up a place in Berlin, that she found a great piece, like I found a clay cutter in Berlin.
Yes.
All I did the next day was send her a fax, and I said I found a great clay cutter at White Cube. Told her the price, and she was okay with it.
We usually at least check with each other by phone if we're apart from each other, you know, to make sure we're in sync.
Yeah.
Before we go ahead.
But see, if that would be limited basically then to artists that we are both familiar with. So if you're someplace, let's say London, and you're by yourself, which isn't the case, and I've never been there by myself. If I found something, before I would go ahead and buy it, I would have the gallery send a JPEG, let's say,
Right.
and information to her wherever she would be. Because see, that's another thing we should bring this up. My wife moved from Chicago to Houston and has been there for 27 years. I was there for 12. So for a long period, we actually were 1,000 miles apart anyway. So when it came to the collecting, you know, we had that distance thing all the time. So that was kind of an unusual circumstance, let's put it that way. And we had art in Houston, and we had art in Chicago.
Yeah, that's right. How do you, how do you describe your collection? How do you, I mean, is there a common thread that runs through it?
Yes, there is one common thread. Everybody, when we purchase the work, is alive. And it's not meant to be a joke. We don't buy anyone that is deceased. And we did that just to limit us, because it really wouldn't have been a stretch of the imagination for us to be collecting dirt woodcuts, let's say, or that type of thing, because we find that extremely interesting.
He's not alive.
Yeah, now, if an artist dies, that does not mean we de-ascension the piece, okay?
I know
so
people do that.
We
but
look at living artists.
Yeah. Is there anything aesthetic that guides the collection, or is it stuff we like?
You know, well, I mean, we don't buy things we don't like. We might buy things that we don't understand or bother us. But I would say we're not afraid of color, okay? We don't have a lot of what I call minimal or architectural pieces. We do actually have quite a few figurative works.
Yes.
Some people
you have
would
a fair amount
say,
of difficult things, though, too. I think you have a fair amount of difficult.
I mean, Paschke, when he was doing the work, was very difficult.
Right.
I mean, John Kern and Dumas are difficult to some people, okay? And so I think we have a lot of figurative work, and you know, we get different impressions from different people who walk through. Like people will say, oh, you have a lot of foreign artists, or oh, you've got lots of erotic art, or this or that. Everybody leaves the collection with their own take on it. We don't really have a direction. We're not out there collecting just paintings and sculptures of horses, let's say, okay? We just like work that speaks to us and that we can actually afford to buy.
You were a school teacher, right? Are you retired now?
I taught school for 20 years.
And what did you? What grade level was it?
I taught children from 8 to 14, specialty in reading.
Interesting. Did you discuss art with them?
I wasn't trained to be a teacher. I
You were
was
not?
pre-law and had a degree in econ. And it was during the Vietnam War. I had two choices to make if I didn't want to go to the military. Go to the seminary or teach in the inner city of Chicago because they couldn't get people to go there.
Correct.
And this was 1968, that great year, if you remember all the things that happened in 68 in Chicago. And Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy being assassinated. So it was, and we got married that year too. So it was a real traumatic.
They weren't assassinated in Chicago. Let's not blaspheme the city too much.
Okay. And then, you know,
There was a convention here.
I got used to teaching because I loved having the hours. And when I got out of school, I would go to the galleries, or I would go to the Art Institute, or I would go to the print and drawing room and look at the works. So I sort of knew everybody. I mean, I knew your gallery when it was in the building before the fire.
Right.
And you know, I really have spent a lot of time just actually being with the art people in the world. How did you get
educated in art? Did you guys study art in college?
No, nothing. We don't have any kind of coursework at all.
We just
You would say you're thoroughly knowledgeable, or fairly knowledgeable, or you know what you're collecting and you know where it fits in context, right?
Right.
How does this happen?
I think I don't find that difficult. I think maybe if you love something, whatever subject it is, you can devour it. Like I hated school myself as a student. The last thing I want to do is read philosophy books or English grammar or whatever. But when it comes to art as an adult, that sort of has kept us going. It's the one thing that you can do even as you age. Like we used to do biking and tennis and all that. But now that we're in our mid-60s, the one thing that's been a constant for the past 43 years is the art world. Don't you find that being involved in art keeps your perspective younger? Dealing with living? Just about everybody we associate with, for the most part, is 20 or 30 or maybe 40. I mean, for the people that looked at that art slant thing that I sent, they might not know who a lot of these people are, but these are people that we really associate with, and if you look at the ages, they're fairly young. I need to send that out to everybody. Oh, you didn't do that? Okay. I forgot. Well, let me just put it this way. I don't know how to do a PowerPoint, so I had 130 visuals for people to look at about us a little bit. It's more recent and old stuff, but you know, that's something for you to look at afterwards then. Yeah, I've got to find that again. I'm going to look for it. Well, I'll send it to you, and then you can do it. I found it. I just type it. You know, if you guys want to find it, I'll post the link. And we can do. You can multitask. Here, I'll put it in here. But I mean, if you want to find this, you just go to Google and type in Robert Mollers, M-O-L-L-E-R-S. But here it is, and you will find it. Greg has. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bob. You just want us to walk around and just give a general view, and if people have questions. Greg's had his hand up for a moment, and then let's do a walk, okay? Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Bob. Hi, Nancy. My father, my parents, they were also educators, and growing up, it was also really tough. I was just wondering how being an educator, and with the amount that teachers made, especially back then, how did you budget your money so that you had money to buy art? How did you?
First of all, we never really spent too much, but at times we actually took out a loan. Sometimes we sold a piece to buy another piece, and
sometimes we made installment payments.
Right, and some dealers
as long as a year or two.
Right, some dealers are very good about that.
Okay.
But you know, when you're a young person in your 20s, you really don't. Unless somebody helps you with that, you really don't know. But the art world was smaller in the early 70s, and maybe in a way not so how would you call it, Hollywood, the way it is now at all these big fairs, you know, like Basel and whatnot, where money rules. So, you know, if you were in Chicago and you were in your 20s and you were a teacher, and if you saw a Paschke painting for $400 or $500, believe me, the dealers would be happy to sell it to you for $100 a month or whatever. But we had taken out loans, and sometimes...
You did take out loans. Did you say you've taken out loans to buy art?
We took out loans.
You know, the favorite sale I ever made, I had a gallery in California before I moved to Chicago, and I had a print in the window that was $100, and a girl came by who was on her way to buy a mattress. And she said, this is like in 1973, she said, if I give you $10 a month and I forego the mattress, can I have this work of art? And I said, of course, indeed, you know. So it took her 10 months to pay off a $100 print.
Right.
But, you know.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling very, very well. I mean, I think that's another thing we have changed, though. We won't buy anything now if we really feel we're straining or extending ourselves too much, where maybe when we were 35, we wouldn't have a problem with that. But I also think that has a lot to do with age and also income, because we'll be on a fixed income pretty soon. But, you know, if you have an eye and if you can find work early, it's generally cheaper, okay? So you can't rely upon Artforum or Art News or Art International, whatever people read, to do your art collecting if you don't have a lot of money. So we've always been sort of independent. In fact, we've been written up by a curator who basically called us fiercely independent, meaning we don't really follow the crowds too much, which can make you unpopular, depending upon, like when we were in Houston, we really didn't buy a lot of Houston artists, and, you know, a lot of the Houston people thought, how could you, you know? But that wasn't our intent. We don't buy because of where we live necessarily.
All right, Patrick has a question, and then I think we're going to go for a walk. Patrick, go ahead. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I would like to ask you, what is it that grabs you by your shirt and say, you got to buy me? What kind of art that does that for you?
Oh, that's a toughie. That really is a toughie. Well, first of all, if it's somebody that we've been looking for, and if the right piece is in front of us at the right price, that is a go for us. If it's somebody we know nothing about, like Lisa Williamson, which was a recent purchase, we knew nothing about her. We saw the work in the gallery before the show opened. We even met her, and we all sat around for an hour and talked, and we got an understanding of the work. That will do it. But it's always, it boils down to, is it something we really, really like? Does it challenge us, and can we afford it? That really is it. And we have passed on things, like my wife said, because we didn't see them in person, let's say, and that's a problem. So, like I said, we'll buy if we have some familiarity about the artist, if we don't actually see it in person, but outside of that, there's really no one answer to that, because as soon as you say one thing, you'll break that in the life, okay? I mean, it's like there's no set rules for it, other than they have to be alive, and we have to be able to afford it. And also another thing now, it has to be able to physically fit and not be a physical problem. You know, you've heard about Joseph Beuys having butter or lard and stuff like that. It has to be something that we can actually live with.
Right, it can't be something that we say is difficult to deal with archivally, you know, because of some strange media, or if it's very fragile, like ceramic work and that sort of thing.
Or extremely heavy.
Or extremely heavy is another issue.
Right. So that, I mean, there's so many answers to that. It's kind of hard to boil it down to one. But
Do you prefer art that challenges you to art that satisfies you? Is that correct?
Well, challenging can be satisfying.
Challenging
Agreed.
is satisfying in our case.
Well, okay, let's go with challenging as opposed to placating.
Okay, whatever. I mean, we certainly don't do this for any reason. I mean, I've said this, and I think Nancy would agree. We would be doing what we're doing even if nobody else was doing it. We're not doing it to be in groups or acceptance or anything like that. We would be doing this if we're the only people in the world doing it.
Okay, let's take a walk.
Okay, I mean, I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do this.
Well, maybe you just sit where you are and rotate the computer a little bit, because you're not on the iPad, right?
That'll be tougher. So let's just do this. So we are in the dining room here now. And Nance, you might want to state what's going on here. Can you see yourself?
No.
We can see her.
There we are.
Yeah, she can see herself. All right, this is the dining room, and they're basically paintings except for the Alan McCullum plaster above the Macaccio. And these are pieces we've had, I think, for a very, very long time. And even on the windowsill. And then the McCullums that are right here, these vehicles or vessels, this is something we actually bought at the Art Institute auction for the Society for Contemporary Art about a year ago. This is a piece that we would have liked to have had when it was made 15 years ago, but it was too expensive. But at the silent auction, nobody bid on it, so we got it for the minimum bid. And then here's other pieces. Now we'll go to the living room. And if you can't see anything, you've got to tell me, because I can't see what I'm showing you.
It's okay. I mean, it's not as good as Art 21, but it's okay.
Okay. Well, this is a cute little story. This is an Isa Genskin radio.
Wait a minute, it's kind of pretty out the window, too.
Well, we'll do that for you. This is an Isa Genskin radio, which is concrete and probably weighs 20 or 25 pounds. We bought that in Cologne and lugged it with us to Documenta, Berlin, Basel, Munich, and then came back to Newark, New Jersey, and we had to declare it through customs. And they didn't understand what this was, and I told them it's a work of art. So the question was, is it signed? And thank God, underneath, it's signed by the artist. But I'll never do anything like that again. Lugging that thing around Europe was ridiculous. Now, one thing I can tell you is we have art everywhere. So this is a wall between the living room and the kitchen. And then this is a hallway that goes to the kitchen.
Pia Fries?
Yes, that's Pia Fries. And underneath is Suzanne Fricon. And then on top, we're very, very early artificial. Vanessa B. Croft.
We have a lot of art by women.
Yeah, we do.
Good.
And the word secrets is actually a neon by Merit Falstaff, who's Norwegian. That's one of the few gifts we accept from an artist. And she gave that to me because I put her in a show here in Chicago. And then these pieces here are by Mutane Rosenblum, who are male and female that work together. Then some early roof photographs. And then in the kitchen, Peter Stahl. And you see the two cake slices, and the chocolate cake is dabbing the strawberry cake.
Yeah.
Well, Peter Stahl works in social and political issues. That's O.J. Simpson killing his wife.
Oh, my.
This is Dan Peterman. These dishes and utensils are made out of Chicago garbage bags. And the material that looks like wood is recycled bottles, plastic bottles.
That's a pretty new acquisition, right?
No, we had that when it was made 15 years ago or so.
I don't remember seeing it when I was in your home before.
Well, don't worry. Artists come to our collection and can't even find their own work. And up there is Gene Dunning, who teaches at Northwestern photography. And then a very, very early acquisition is the Salowitz suite of etchings, his first. Tim Rollins and Kids of Survival. Kehinde Wiley. Mel Bachner.
How many of these artists do you know, or have you met? And you know,
Over half at least. I mean, I never counted. I never met Salowitz. Okay. Then
Right.
This is Jim Lambie, a mirror. And then we're going to go into a powder room. And the powder room is notorious for the Iraqi photographs we have. And then this diptych is by the Japanese girl that I discovered online, who was a student of Roof.
That we talked about earlier.
Right, and this is Paul McCarthy. And then again, this is Gene Dunning, Melanie Schiff, Vanessa Beecroft. And we gave a party for Vanessa years ago in Houston when she was visiting. And we stayed out of photography for a long time, but when I had the opportunity to get a Harry Callahan, Eleanor in Lake Michigan, that started us on photography, because we really stayed out of it for a long time. This is a very famous drawing of William T. Wiley. It's a self-portrait. And it's been in many, many different museum shows. And it's right next to a young graduate from the Art Institute, Nazia Lafti, who will be having a show at Tony White Gallery next month.
It's a nice piece.
Yeah. And then this suite of photographs is by a German photographer, Peter Piller, who archives, he categorizes images off of magazines, and then he puts them into groups. So this is German girls licking ice cream cones. And then this is a pretty significant work on paper wall. And like Elizabeth Payton, Marlene Dumas, Jim Nutt, John Kern.
How many artists do you have more than one? How many artists have you made more than one purchase of at a second, third, fourth time?
Well, I'd have to figure that out.
Well, you know, ballpark, a handful.
Nancy's working on putting all this stuff together in some sort of order. We have our separate Excel file and we have the JPEG, but to actually get in order to answer questions like that, I would say probably 20 to 30 artists we have multiple pieces by. Because sometimes they just get overpriced. When we bought the John Kern, it wasn't expensive. You can't touch John Kern today.
That's right.
And this is the other one we bought, Lisa Williamson, who's an LA sculptor. And then we have a Bob Gober. That's him dressed in drag as a bride for a Saks ad. And this is Carol Dunham. This is the series what he calls Bathers. And then this is a whole wall of Tillmans. We bought these Tillmans individually over the years, started off buying them when they were about $300. I think they're up to about $8,000 today.
I think they're more.
Well, they might be. And then this is a young artist also out of Chicago that had a show at Rona Hoffman just a few months ago. And this is something unusual. This is a work we bought at auction. Now that's rare for us to buy at auction just a few months ago. And the reason we bought it was, right, an online auction. This was a work we saw at the first Frieze Fair in London. The entire edition was sold out. So Nancy was down in Houston when the Houston had their first art fair, and Heritage Galleries had a booth. So I just looked up Heritage Galleries, and I saw this image that was going to be at auction from the Pillsbury collection. And so we got it, which is sort of a cool thing for us. We really wanted that piece. And then some Marcel Zamas, Enrico Bai, Nan Golden, Thomas Hirschhorns, who we really, really like,
How many pieces are hanging?
Which one here?
Now, how many pieces in your home?
Oh, I don't know. It's a couple hundred at least. Balkan Hall, Opie, Mike Lash.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, now we're going into the bedroom. This is a great Lynn Folks. And you wanted to know about the first piece? That's the Moreau piece right there.
Okay.
And then on the counter here is a Damien Hirst, Mel Bachner, Thomas Roof, and the first contemporary piece in the collection, the Paschke Shoe.
Beautiful.
Valerio Dami, an Italian from the 60s, and then the West Coast artist Roy DeForest. James
How do you
Brown.
decide what goes next to what?
Pardon?
How do you decide what hangs next to who?
Well, first of all, will it fit?
Okay.
Should it be exposed to light or not?
Okay.
But other than that, really, that's pretty much it. I mean, when you have a lot of pieces, it's like a puzzle. You try to fit them together, and you also try to make sure that they, you know, they work together, okay? I mean, here's behind the door, David Shrigley's photography and drawings. And then John Bach, and a very early James Brown etching, or Roger Brown, sorry about that. Good thing she's here. And then even like in the washroom. And there's Aikijima, who you know.
I do.
Yeah. Now this piece we bought. This is one of those pieces that we did not see in person and we bought. But we knew the artist's work very, very well. And I remember the first night that I had this piece, and I went to turn off the lights to go to bed. And what my wife is going to do is just turn off the light in the room and look. You see the stars?
No, it just went all black.
Okay, because it glows. The stars glow.
Got it. I don't think the camera's sensitive enough.
Okay, that's all right. And then this is a wall of Thomas Roof's little photographs. By the way, you notice we don't have art lights. We decided not to have art lights in this home. This is my wife's portrait by Ed Paschke that just came back from the Art Institute. It was on display for about 6 months. That's Maurizio Pellegrin, Italian artist. And these over here are Alan McCullum. And we just had a text piece by Adam Pendleton installed on the wall. Then this is Mouton Rosenblum again, the duo that work out of Vienna and London, and early Tony Tassett. All of these paintings are by Paul Housley, who's in London. This is Christian Boltanski and Eric Parker.
Your memory's still really sharp, Bob. These would be hard for, many people to remember.
Well, we're doing okay here. And Chris Lewis. Now, Paul did mention the view. I might as well do this for a second. Because we live in art in a sense. We're 26 stories up, and this is what our view is.
Pretty nice. Also kind of fuzzy.
And for those of you that are not Chicagoans, we are 2 blocks from the contemporary art galleries in the West Loop of Chicago. This is my wife's washroom. She has John Wesley, Franz West, a current edition piece, and a whole suite of Iraqi photographs. Another John Wesley, and then this is very interesting. This is Tom Fruin from Brooklyn. These are stitched drug bags that he finds at the corners where he lives in Brooklyn and makes these beautiful tapestry type things. Very interesting.
Wonderful.
If I'm going too fast, I'm sorry. It's just so we didn't
Good.
show you everything, but it gives you sort of an idea of what we're doing. Like these two works are by, this is the young woman that I sold a lot of works out. And when I say sell, it doesn't mean I was making money out of it. I was calling up my friends and we made studio visits. And we sold a lot of these pieces. And she's now in Provincetown on a 2-year residency, which is kind of cool. So, back to the table. I can't see a thing. Oh, there we go.
All right. Let's find out if anybody's got more questions. Somebody want to put their hand up or unmute themselves and ask a question?
I just want to say that you have a magnificently varied collection. Really beautiful collection.
Okay,
Thanks,
well,
Jason.
I guess we should thank you. It's not one-sided or has one direction, which is kind of fun, really. I like it that way. But you know, we've been doing this not for 10, not for 20, but for 40. And we don't, like I said, dispose of, or whatever term you want to use, of work because it's not popular anymore. And it's interesting how artists can have careers that skyrocket, and then they can disappear, and sometimes they just stay gone, and then sometimes they come back. I mean, it's sort of like an EKG. I mean, you know, you don't know. I mean, we have work in this collection of people that have been in the Whitney twice that we probably couldn't get $1,000 for today if we were to auction them. And then we have things we bought that are worth tons of money now. And why is one more valuable than the other? It's that's a whole round table in itself.
It is
and
indeed.
I don't even want to try to even get involved in that right now.
Let's take a question from Antonio, Bob and Nancy. Antonio is the furthest participant. He lives north of Perth. That would be, you know, West Australia. Antonio, what's on your mind?
Bob and Nancy, nice to meet you, and thank you for your beautiful collection showing us.
Get a little louder, my friend.
Oh, say a little bit louder? Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Bob and Nancy, you have a wonderful collection. Thank you for sharing it with us. I wanted to ask you, how difficult is it for you when you come across a piece that's too large? You must come across stuff all the time that won't actually fit. I mean, I guess you can't do anything about that in that circumstance, but has an occasion ever happened where you've had to buy something that wouldn't fit and then figure it out later?
Well, when it comes to that, I mean, we were once in New York. We were looking at a piece. We weren't sure how tall our ceiling was. We actually called our neighbor at the time and asked them, would they please measure the height of our ceiling? Luckily, it fit.
Yes.
So that worked. However, after we moved to Chicago, it only fit in one place. And the problem was we knew it wouldn't fit here at all, so we gave it to a museum. However, today, if we went to a gallery and we saw a piece that was 10 feet by 10 feet, we wouldn't even consider it because it's something that physically could not fit. We have been in one collector's home many, many years ago where he had a large, long painting, and he didn't have a wall long enough for it. So what he did is he suspended it from the ceiling in a diagonal.
Right.
That was, by the way, Paul, that was Jim Faulkner when he lived on Webster Street. And it was a Robert Barnes long painting.
I bet you for Jim it looked really excellent, but I think most collectors who would try to do that, it wouldn't work.
Right.
You know, Jim was gifted. All right, somebody else. Tiffany, thank you, Antonio. Tiffany, did you have a question?
I have a question. It's Sharon.
Hi, Sharon. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Bob and Nancy. I just loved seeing the collection. it was really obvious to me that you didn't have very many sculptures, and I just wondered, was that a conscious choice in terms of aesthetics of what you liked, or was there also considerations that kept you away from that that venue?
Actually, we have had a lot of sculpture.
Yes.
And we still have some. If you start counting them, like, I'm just standing here, I'm looking, we have Sal LeWitt, Alan McCullum, Issa Genskin, Franz West, Atelier van Leeuwenhoek, Ruth Duckworth. I mean, this goes around. We did have other sculptures that have been put into museums, and some very important ones. The Felix Gonzalez Torres light bulb piece, the Miroslav Volka piece, a Franz Erhard Walter piece. I mean, we have done sculpture. In fact, some people would probably say maybe the sculpture was the strongest part of our collection. But again, it takes up space, and some of these pieces just physically wouldn't fit in where we are now. But we do like sculpture. But like I was saying, I think we're really almost concentrating on works on paper for the most part, because it's just easier to deal with when you get to a certain age and a certain limitation of space. And when you saw an abbreviated look to our home, just imagine buying something now that's, let's say, 5 feet by 6 feet by 4 feet, which is a sculpture.
Yeah, where would
it would be difficult finding an actual place for it to be placed. It doesn't mean we don't like sculpture. We like sculpture a lot.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thanks, Shane. Yes, who's that?
Hi, Jerry.
Yes, Jerry, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Bob and Nancy, thanks for your tour of your house. You have got a very lovely collection. And I'm just wondering, what are the future plans for your collection? Are you going to pass it on to family, or have you given that any thought at all?
We are not giving it to family. We have a trust.
Right, we don't have children, so we have a trust.
And we work with curators from various museums. We update every 4 or 5 years, meaning, you know, one museum can change their curator. Like we've been working with the Manila collection in Houston. We've been working with the Art Institute of Chicago, the MCA in Chicago, the Blanton at the University of Texas, Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, Grand Valley State University, the Smart Museum at the University of Chicago. We have a trust that takes care of where these works go, and also, which is kind of neat, we actually give work to friends. So, like, we hadn't been at this one couple's house in the suburbs here for 2 or 3 years, and we went into their home for Thanksgiving. They had a whole wall of things we had given them. I mean, you know, we actually give art to people. So we collect now, I think, with intent of placement, meaning besides the pleasure and joy of owning it ourselves, how would it fit in certain museum collections? Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of how we are doing it now. And paper is one of the easier ways to get an artist's work into a museum collection because of space limitations.
Most of your paper is in prints, though, correct? Most of it's unique.
No, most of it actually is all unique work.
Yeah.
We did collect a lot of prints in the beginning, but now it's 90% or more unique.
Great. Thank you, Jerry. Mike, you want to ask a question?
You know, as far as sculpture goes, wall reliefs or things like that.
Here.
Some of the things I've been doing, you know, just because I have the same problem. Our walls are pretty much covered.
Louder, louder.
Our walls are pretty much covered with paintings, but a lot of times I'll make a wall relief or something like that, and that's a collector. I mean, do you think about sculpture that can go on a wall, or is it mostly things that are freestanding and in the round? Or does it make any difference? Can you hear me?
Well, not well. Paul, did you hear it?
Yeah, the question is he makes sculpture, and he frequently makes wall reliefs, and he wants to know if you think of wall reliefs differently than you think of freestanding sculpture.
Probably. I mean, our Lawrence Carroll, which is right behind us, that look like boxes, you know, those are three-dimensional pieces.
Yeah.
Off the wall. But again, I mean, just think about this. It's not like there's much space for anything now. Not that that would limit us, but you know, we have to be thinking about what we can do.
How recently did you purchase something, and is it in your home exhibited now?
When was the last? Say that again.
Have you purchased something in the recent past, and is it installed in your home?
Yes.
Like what? What are we talking about?
Recent purchases that are now installed in our home.
Oh, they're all here. And actually, the last 9 purchases or acquisitions that we have are at the end of the visual presentation on Artsland.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if you want a quick couple, I can do that for you. Well, we talked about, we bought this at auction a few months ago.
Correct.
We bought this painting from Runner Hoffman Gallery about 2 shows ago.
Todd Chilton.
Yes. We bought Lisa Williamson from Shane Campbell a show ago.
Okay.
We bought Nasia Lofty. That was probably in the summer from Tony White Gallery.
Did you move things to install those?
Sometimes we move things around. We shift them, yes.
Okay.
And then the young woman that I helped sell a lot of work, her work. So that's some.
Okay.
That have been acquired in the past year.
I think we need to wrap this up momentarily, and I see a number of people with questions, but I want to ask people, I want to listen to questions from people who haven't asked. So, okay. Laura, go ahead. Oops, I unmuted you and you remuted you. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just curious about video, because I assume you know other collectors, but seeing your collection, and it's beautiful, by the way, I always have wondered if people collect video, do they, like, are you familiar with that, or do people, like, hang monitors or something like that on the wall?
I think my wife will be able to answer that more. Let me just say that we don't really collect video. There could be many reasons for it, but my wife knew a major collector in Houston that had many videos. And so why don't you describe how that was in his collection?
Well, he had computer monitors and screens set up and built into his home all over the place. He even had, and this actually was a couple, they had a special viewing room that was like a theater. So they could alternate different videos that they played in this little theater room. And, you know, he virtually had, you know, little video screens in every room, you know, with different things going on. So it's quite extensive. I mean, for us, we don't have a place to display video work very well. We have a very small number of video pieces we collected a number of years ago, but you know, we don't have a, you know, a setup really for running them.
Just put it on the DVD player and look at them on television.
Yeah, but not to have them on, you know, constantly, so to speak. So it's not something, again, that we don't, it doesn't mean we don't like video work, it's just that it's not really feasible for us to display it very well in our collection.
There's a wonderful collector in Chicago named Jefferson Goddard who only collects video, And I think he has 6 monitors that he rotates video on all the time, and he leaves them all running. I understand correctly. I think we should take one more question and then move on. And that's Karen. Karen, did you have a question?
I did. Is it okay because I already asked one?
Oh, I wasn't clear on if you had or not. You are the only person. Well, yeah, let's do you and I, because I think everybody, I don't see any other people who have also didn't. So go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Again, I'd like to say thank you so much for showing us your wonderful collection. I was wondering, you donate to museums. I think you said that you don't accept gifts from artists except for the one. And I'm wondering if that's to make sure that the artist can have their own artwork, or if it's more to keep a standard to your collection.
Okay, I had a hard time for volume. Paul, could you just condense that for me?
Yeah. Is it true you do not accept gifts from artists, and why?
We try not to do that too often, okay? And you might say, why? Well, you can end up with a lot of things maybe you don't necessarily would want anyway. And, I mean, right now, we're sort of maxed out in space anyway. You know, it isn't like 100%, but probably most of the time we don't. But is there a reason for it? It's just basically logistics, and also many times what is offered is really not what we would want in the collection.
Do you try to buy directly from artists when you can, or do you always go through a gallery?
No, we have bought directly from artists in studios. Mm-hmm. However, we do respect gallery-artist relationships, meaning that if an artist is represented by a gallery, we won't circumvent that business relationship.
Good for you.
Thank you.
I see one other person who had a question who hadn't asked one, and Sally, you're going to be last, and then we're going to unmute everybody and applaud. But first, Sally, go ahead.
Yes, she said something about how you de-extension a piece. I'm not familiar with that name, de-extension a piece, and also
that means
how
get rid of. That's a museum term for get rid of.
That's a pretty coarse way of putting it.
How does that work? How does a resale work? I'm not familiar with how galleries do that. How you sell back?
Not necessarily resale.
Okay.
It could be museum placement. You know, it could be donated to a museum. It could be given. It could be sold, which is rare. We rarely do that. It could be given to friends. I mean, I would love. It'll never happen, but I'd love to see every single work that we've ever owned displayed in a museum setting just once. It'll never happen, but it's kind of fun to go into a museum and see work that we've lived with installed, like 2 sculptures in the Smart Museum right now. You know, it's just kind of fun to see how work looks in a different setting. In our former home that we had, we just been in this home for a year, all the walls were white, and we had track lighting throughout. Paul was in there. So it was actually like a white cube, and the art looked great. Now, we don't have a white wall, right, and we don't have track lighting. And people that have seen the work over the years say, this is so totally different. The works look so totally different on a green wall or a gray wall. So just even that changes things. But to get back, de-extension basically means it's not in the house and it's not in the collection anymore. And there could be many, many ways that it has left.
Well, thank you. I was going to ask you about the color of your walls, but you answered that. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, hold on. I'm going to mute everybody here for a moment, and then unmute Bob and Nancy again. And I want to thank you guys. I think that was insanely, wonderfully informative. I guess I mean incredibly as opposed to insanely.
Well, I'll say this, though, because people sometimes realize questions later, and also they didn't see the arts slant visuals. Right. If anybody wants to contact us, we'll give you our email if you have questions.
That is posted right here. Tell me again.
You can give it to them.
What is Robert Mollers at AOL.com, right?
No, it's rlmchicago@yahoo.com. R as in Robert, L as in Louis, M as in Mollers, Chicago@yahoo.com. So if you have any questions or want to know things, we'll be glad to answer them.
rlmchicago@yahoo.com. Okay. I'll send everybody a copy of this recording too, so Bob and Nancy, you can have a copy of this, and I don't know, put it up on ArtSlant if you want. And
I don't think so.
all right, so I'm now unmuting everybody, and I want to really, I really appreciate all your contribution and your sharing your art, and you're sharing yourselves with us. Thank you very, very much. Everybody, give them say thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. I'm going to stop this recording now. Thank you, guys.